Greetings, dear viewers. The history of motorcycle engineering knows of cases where extremely extravagant motorcycles have been constructed. Some models went into production, while others were just exotic concepts for yet another exhibition. Master enthusiasts went even further. They are credited with countless unusual and often completely impractical and absurd motorcycle designs. And in this episode, I'll tell you about one such creation. How about the idea of equipping a motorcycle with 24 chainsaw engines crazy enough for you? Presenting to you the incredible dragster called Dolmette, created by the German artist Rötger Feldmann. You're watching the Cross Moda channel. Enjoy the show. You know, unique creations like this should never be considered separately from the personality of their creator, because that makes it easier to understand what triggered the construction of this crazy machine. Stories can be different, ranging from completely simple to extremely intriguing, and this one belongs to the latter. Meet Rötger Werner Friedrich Wilhelm Feldmann. From now on in the video, we won't use his full name. Because he is an eccentric personality, Rötger Feldmann, also known by the pseudonym Brösel. In the introduction, I mentioned that he is a German artist. There are different kinds of artists, but Rötger is a caricaturist and comic book artist. Let's turn our attention away from him for a few seconds. You have probably come across these scenes from the cartoon at least once. This interestingly drawn cartoon motorcyclist is named Werner, and he is the most successful German comic book character of all time. More than 10 million books have been sold, and the animated films have been watched by an audience of 13 million viewers. And do you know who Rötger Feldmann used as a model for this character? Himself and his brother Andy. Werner's life is that of a plumber's apprentice and biker, which consists of drinking lots of beer and tuning his motorcycle, a modified Horex Regina from the 1950s. Both of these regularly get him into trouble with the police and the German Vehicle Safety Agency too. Rötger Feldmann was born in 1950. In his youth, he trained as a lithographer, after which he was drafted into military service. In 1971, Rötger started working in his field at the Geisel Company in Flensburg. Since he was constantly drawing caricatures and comics, especially caricatures of his bosses, he was fired in 1972. Left without a job throughout the 70s, Brösel mostly drew comics and made a living from them. His first caricatures, featuring the character Werner, were published in 1978. One of the main sources of inspiration for them was his constant conflicts with the German vehicle inspection and the police, because of the modifications he made to his Horex motorcycle, as well as his connections with the chopper enthusiasts community. Rötger was a passionate motorcycle enthusiast from a young age and kept his love for these machines throughout his life, and he expressed his rebellious protest through the image of a caricatured hero. And before getting to the motorcycle with 24 chainsaw engines, we need to take a look at an earlier creation. The story of this motorcycle with 4 Horex Regina engines and the famous name Red Porsche Killer began with a verbal argument that took place in the early 80s at the Gallery 68 Club in Kiel, which belonged to Holger Henze. Brösel insulted the bar owner's Porsche 911, and Henze didn't stay silent, calling Brösel's favorite motorcycle pre-war junk. The guys agreed to have a race. In fact, Henze and Feldmann were friends. They met back in the mid-70s, and it was Henze who introduced Feldmann to the publication that first published cartoons featuring the character Werner. Werner and Henze both had a passion for engines, and one day after having an argument, these two were most likely just joking around to stir up the audience a bit. The argument was originally described in the 1985 Werner Eiskalt comic in the chapter called The Race. The comic became very popular, and Feldmann began getting more letters asking when the race would happen. Rötger enlisted the support of his brother Andy and Wolfgang Auslieber to bring the motorcycle to life, and he took on the main responsibility for the design, and the construction was up to Wolfgang. By '88, the red Porsche killer was ready. The team took 4 Horex Regina racing engines. Each has a displacement of 600 cc and a power output of 45 horsepower. They connected them in a row, like on the dragsters of the 70s. The crankshafts were linked together by a primary chain drive, and the combined torque was then transmitted to a 4-speed sports gearbox from Harley-Davidson. The guys also worked a bit on the engines. They installed aggressive camshafts, modified ignition, and Dell'Orto carburetors. The total power output of the quartet of Horex engines was 162 horsepower. In the 1985 comic, the race between Holgi and Werner ended in a tie. In 1988, the race happened in real life. It was the spectacle of the century. On September 4th, 250,000 spectators witnessed these events at the Hartenholm airfield. The event took place as part of a festival with various biker entertainments, plenty of beer, and kilowatts of music. The race lasted only a few seconds and was held in a drag racing format. However, instead of the standard 402 meters, which is a quarter mile, a slightly longer distance of 600 meters was chosen. Bruzel briefly pulled ahead in his red Porsche killer, but then he shifted gears incorrectly, and Holgi's red 911 overtook him and won the race. The organizers initially expected up to 50,000 people to attend, but the excitement was so great that at one point they had to make entry free for everyone who wanted to come. The crowd was ecstatic. The other side of such a large event was mountains of trash, ruined gardens, and about 1,500 people injured. By 2004, Rötger intended to hold another race and festival. This time, he was supposed to compete against the Swiss racer Christina Sürer in a car, ABT Audi AS400. And it was specifically for this race, based on Purcell's ideas, that the Dolmette motorcycle was designed. The machine, like the red Porsche killer, had a multi-engine layout, but here the Germans took a much crazier approach. They used 24 power units from Dolmar PS 7,900 chainsaws, which were evenly placed on both sides of the motorcycle, 12 on each side arranged in 2 rows of 6 units each. Each of the chainsaws has an engine displacement of 79 cc. As a result, the total displacement came out to 1,896 cc. The total maximum power of the motorcycle's multi-engine setup was 170 horsepower, and the torque was 130 Ns. The individual chainsaw engines are connected in groups of 3 using a belt drive, forming a total of 8 modules. From the pulleys of these 8 modules, the force is transmitted by more powerful belts to a 5-speed gearbox from Harley-Davidson and then to the rear wheel. It is worth noting that Rötger Feldmann used not only the engines from chainsaws. In fact, he mounted entire chainsaws onto the motorcycle with minor modifications, although without the bars and chains. Individual chainsaws transmit torque through the standard centrifugal clutch. The frame was made to accommodate a complex belt drive system with pulleys inside. This 300-kilogram marvel is capable of accelerating to over 200 km/h. It should be noted that there is no single starter provided for simultaneously starting all 24 chainsaws. Before the race, a couple of people start each one individually, which allows the growing buzzing to turn into a deafening roar. However, it doesn't quite become a symphony. The sound is as if several teams of lumberjacks have started their chainsaws. In September 2004, the race took place at the Lausitzring during the 3-day Torfrock Festival, which was attended by about 30,000 guests. There were several races featuring the ABT Audi AS400 and the Dolmette motorcycle. Both Rötger and his brother Andy took turns riding the drag bike. However, all the races ended in defeat. The motorcycle was plagued by technical problems. The further fate of the Dolmette is unknown, Most likely the motorcycle is languishing in the Feldmann brothers' garage and is occasionally displayed to the public. The legendary race took place on September 2nd, 2018. In honor of the 30th anniversary, a red Porsche 911 and the four-engine red Porsche killer faced off again on the straight track. The festival was held again at the Hartenholm airfield. By that time, the red Porsche killer had been modified several times by Andy Feldmann, and in the 2018 race, Rötger defeated Holger's Porsche 911. Also, as part of the event, various activities were held on 4 racing tracks: motocross, production car races, various stunts, all accompanied by rock music and drinks. The event was repeated in 2019, but this time without the motorcycle. Andy participated with a drag racing car. That same year, Spiegel magazine reported that Henze wanted to sell his now legendary Porsche 911. That's the story of the motorcycle built from 24 chainsaws and the 4-engine killer of red Porsches. Out of context, it's just an absurd piece of machinery. However, after learning the story of Rötger Feldmann and Holger Henze, and getting to know the comic book hero Werner a bit, you start to look at these creations from a different perspective. Yes, it's absurd, and these motorcycles have no practical value. However, Brussel, Holgi, and their comrades had a blast and enjoyed themselves to the fullest, while also entertaining fans at various events. This is one of those cases where people created machines just as they imagined in their fantasies and enjoyed it. As of 2026, Rötger and Holger are already elderly men. The former is 75 and the latter is 81. And behind them is a bright life, full of emotions and events. At this point, my story comes to an end. Don't forget to engage with the video, like, comment. It motivates me to make new, interesting episodes. Thank you for watching. This was the Cross Moto channel. See you next time.